Hey everyone, in today's video, you are going to learn about Firebase and we are going to implement a web application, a chat application with Firebase. And that application will send text messages, also image messages. Let's get started. So first of all, let me introduce you to this Firebase Web CodeLab, which is part of the Google's program for CodeLabs. And essentially, you can follow this complete CodeLab and get done with building whatever we are trying to build. But one fact right here is that this CodeLab is outdated. So I'm going to be teaching you some of the things which you will not find here. But still, you will be able to finish this CodeLab within no time. So let's get started. So first of all, let's look at the final output. In this particular application, you should be able to log in using Firebase or Google, and then you should be able to send messages, also send images. Now, in this particular video, you are going to learn how to use Firebase Cloud Store, how to use cloud storage for uploading these images for Firebase, authenticating your users with Firebase authentication, deploying your web application to Firebase hosting, which means that this application would be live and everyone can use that. And also we are talking about Firebase Cloud Messaging, which is an interesting feature when you think about it, so you can engage with your customers. And finally, we're talking about collecting some performance data for this particular web application. So what you need right now in this particular example is you need an editor, which means you need to have VS Code, Sublime Text, or something like that. Then you need to have Node.js installed. If you don't have that, you can quickly go to the Node.js site and download this. Of course, you can find the link of this CodeLab in the description. Then you definitely need a terminal console for running some commands. You need a browser where you're going to run this, and essentially the sample code. So first of all, we need to get the sample code. So you go to the second step and you basically copy this complete command. Then you need to open your terminal and then you need to execute this command. So just try to see which folder you want to put this project in, and you can just go there and say git clone and blah blah blah. Once you copy this and enter this, you should have this folder created. Once you have the folder created, you need to open this into VS Code or your favorite editor of choice. I already have this opened here in VS Code, and as you can see here, we have WebStart and other folders as well. The WebStart is the folder where we are going to do everything. So we are going to essentially use this particular folder as a point of start. So you need to open this and you will see that there is a package.json here, a Firebase RC, Firebase JSON and whatnot. So essentially what you need to do is that you need to cd into this WebStart. So cd WebStart, and then you need to run npm install. Once you run this command, you will essentially install all the node modules which are essential for this project. I already have done that, so I don't need to do that anymore. Let's get back to the CodeLab and see what are the first steps. So first of all, we need to create and set up a Firebase project. So we are going to follow all these steps right now. So first of all, you need to go to console.firebase.com, which is this, or console.firebase.google.com, and then you essentially need to create a project. We are going to call this friendly chat. So you can write the name here, friendly chat, and then you can click continue. Then you can choose to enable or disable Google Analytics. I'm just going to enable this. I'm going to select my account for the Google Analytics and create the project. Once this project is created, we need to do a couple of things. We need to set up our Firebase hosting. We need to set up our Cloud Firestore, which is the database where all the text messages are going to be saved. Then we also need to set up the cloud storage where all the image files would be stored. And that's pretty much it. So I'll just let this one finish. Now that this is finished, I can click continue, and then this will take us to the project itself. So everyone, follow along with me. Once you're done with that, we first need to create a project. So this is the Firebase project that we have created, but we need to say if we are using this for a web app, a mobile app, or whatnot. So here I can select web. Once I've done that, I can give this a name. So I can say friendly chat. I'm also going to take the Firebase hosting one. So this is checked now. And then I can register the application. You do not need to kind of follow the other steps that are mentioned here. So you can ignore those for now because we are going to handle them later on for this CodeLab. So you click next, and then finally you say continue to console. Okay. Once you have done that, you should be able to see this web application right here. Now let's talk about authentication. We need to enable authentication to enable Google Auth. So I'm going to go to authentication, and here we are going to click get started. Then we are going to click Google, and then we are going to click enable. Make sure that you provide an email here. So I'm just going to provide my email here. This is just the support email. You don't need to worry about this one. Then you click save, and this would enable the Google authentication for the project. So easy peasy, within just a few steps, we are now done with enabling Google authentication for Firebase. Now let's go to Firestore database, and here we are going to enable Cloud Firestore. So you need to also click create database here. You need to click start in test mode, because when we do this, this will essentially allow our database to be connected from anywhere. So let's click this, let's click next. And then we can select a location. I'm just going to select Europe West and I'm going to enable this. Once you're done with that, we are going to talk about cloud storage, where we are going to store all of our files. I'm just going to quickly go to CodeLab and see if I'm missing any step. We enable the cloud Firestore, the cloud storage, and that's it. All right. So once we set up this security rules, now with the new version, I don't think you need to set up this at all, because it potentially creates it just like the Firestore. So here you can see that we got some rules, and here we have read write if false. Instead of read write if false, we need to set this to true, or we could say it's similar to how we have the rules for Firestore. So if I go to Firestore, here we can see that there are some rules that tell who can use or who can get access to this particular Firestore instance. So here we can copy this, and then we can essentially go and then we can paste it, which means that now this storage is accessible for about 30 days from now. So once you publish those changes, we are good with the first step. Now we are going to install the Firebase command line interface. So what you need to do here is that you need to run this command npm install -g Firebase tools. So you need to go to your terminal, and you can run this command essentially from anywhere, from any folder. So once you run this, you should be able to install Firebase tools, and you can verify by doing Firebase version, and this will tell you what version of Firebase you're running. Awesome. So you can see here that the version I'm using right now is 10.2.0. So you should be able to see something like this as well. Once we are done with that, we need to do Firebase login. So we have to do this inside the WebStart project or WebStart folder. We essentially don't have to do it inside the folder, but the next command is going to be there. So it's better to do it that way. So I'm going to just copy this, and then I'm going to go to my VS Code. And here you can see that I'm inside the WebStart folder, which means that I can now run Firebase login. As you can see, I'm already logged in, but you might see a prompt that says, hey, press enter to open the browser. And essentially it would just go to your browser, you will be able to log in, and then you can come back to this particular folder or this particular instance of the terminal. The next command to use is Firebase use add, which essentially adds the Firebase console project that we have created, which is this friendly chat, to your local repository. So it connects those two things. It connects the Firebase project with your code. So you need to go to your terminal again, and then you need to run Firebase use add. And once you do so, it will ask which project you want to connect with. And here I can quickly go and select friendly chat here. And then we have a default, or we need to provide an alias. For example, there might be multiple environments that you want to use for your project. For example, it could be development, staging, production, alpha, beta. But here we are just going to use default because the CodeLab says so. So we are just going to use the default one. Now that we are done with this, let's move to the next step, which is running the starter app locally. Now here you can see that it says web start directory, run the following Firebase CLI command. Now this is the place where things get a bit weird, because we need to run this, but we also need to run another command along with this one, and I didn't see where that should be. So what you need to do is that you need to do two things. One, you need to run this command. So I'm going to go and run this. Notice that I am still in the WebStart folder, so I'm running Firebase serve only hosting. This would essentially run the application just like the production environment, but this is running it locally. So it's serving the public folder, which is this one. Okay. So now that we have this running at localhost 5000, you need to open another one or another terminal. You need to make sure that you are in the WebStart folder. So you need to go WebStart, and then you need to run npm start. Now, what this does is that this runs the Webpack config or the Webpack server, which essentially generates a couple of files for us, which are not done automatically if you just run the Firebase serve command. So once you do so, you will see a couple of new files created in the WebStart project. But essentially, this is what you need to do. One more thing that we need to do before we run WebStart is that we need to go to Webpack config, and here we need to enable something. So here you will notice that we have eval source map mentioned here for this Webpack config, but you need to kind of convert that into source map just so we can debug our applications better if we need to. Now you can run the npm start command within the folder, and we are all good. We are all set. So now we can move to the next step, which is import and configure Firebase. So what we need to do in this particular step is that we need to integrate the Firebase SDK within our application. So what we have done so far is that we have connected Firebase project with our local repository as in terms of connecting those locations, but our code does not access Firebase at the moment. So what we need to do is that we need to copy all of this, and we need to go to our index.html and paste it there. So you'll go to your code, make sure you're inside webstart public index.html, and inside here you can go ahead and add those scripts. So just above the main.js file, you're going to add all of these scripts. So we are accessing the Firebase app, auth, storage, messaging, Firestore, and performance. So all of these things. Once you hit save, we are good to go. Then we need to add another script which is configuring the Firebase. So all you need to do is copy this one, and then you need to go and paste it just below everything else. So this init.js, this should be right here. Now that we have saved this, we can see if there's anything missing. So here you can see that we have all these files. Now let's see what we have done so far and actually check this out. So I'm going to go to localhost 5000 because we have not seen anything so far. So here you can see that we have the application. Yay! Now I'm going to go and inspect it. And here you will see that we got some message like no Firebase configuration object provided, blah, blah, blah. However, if I go to Firebase config, here we have something else. But if I go and see the CodeLab, it says that, hey, this Firebase init.js should essentially exist and we should be able to see all of this code. Now I see all of this code, but for some reason it seems like it's not working and I couldn't figure out while I was testing this before why. So we have a Firebase config.js and we need to set it up. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to go to my Firebase console, and here I'm going to go to project overview, friendly chat, settings, and inside here, if I go down, you will see all those variables. Now, don't worry about these variables because I'm going to delete this app anyways, but you can copy this object. Then you need to go to your code, and inside source, Firebase config, here is the object that you need to provide in this config here. So you need to replace this object with this. Once you do this, you need to hit save. And as soon as you do so, you see that this Webpack server, it automatically regenerates the file. So if I go to my friendly chat app now, and if I sort of refresh now, you will see that we don't get the error anymore. Yay! We got it working somehow. But the app doesn't work at all at the moment, and we are going to essentially implement things one by one. Here you can see that if I click sign in with Google, this says to do, implement Google sign in. I can do this. Click send and says you must sign in first. So there are a couple of things implemented already. Remember that in this particular application, we are not talking about how we build the UI, but how we use Firebase in general and what are the concepts of connecting with Firebase. Now that we have done this, let's move to the next step, which is set up the user sign in. Now, the first thing that we need to do here is that in the CodeLab, it says that you need to go and open main.js and update the things. However, we essentially don't need to do that. We are going to use the index.js, and I'm going to tell you how. First of all, we just need to copy this code, and you can see that here the function is called sign in. So I'm going to go into my code inside the source folder and into this index.js. This is where we are going to write all of our code. So first of all, if I move down, you can see that we have this function called sign in. Inside of this alert, I'm going to copy and paste this code. Okay, here I can change this to const, because this is only being used once, so that's fine. So if I just save this now, and if I go to my app, refresh, and click the sign in button, let's see what happens. Boom, we got this sign in pop-up via which I can now sign in to the application. So I can use my account to sign in. Now, as soon as I do so, you will notice that nothing happens here because we don't have the UI code implemented. But if I go to my Firebase console into the authentication, you will see my user right here because I just signed in. So you can see when I signed in and what happened here. So we are good to go from here. Now that we have done this, let's talk about how do we sign out. So if I go to the sign out function, I can now replace this code. So I'm going to go to my code, see this to do to sign out of Firebase. So I'm going to replace this with sign out, and let's move forward. So the next step is to copy this code where we are saying init Firebase auth. Now the thing is that this application, when I sign in, it should show my name and my profile. And when I sign out, it should essentially remove those. There's some code that needs to be there actively listening to the state of the sign in or the state of the authentication. If I log in, it should update the UI. If I log out, it should update the UI. So that listener essentially is this one. Here, we are saying that, hey, Firebase auth on auth state change, and we have this auth state observer. This essentially makes sure that whenever the user logs in or logs out, we have a function that we can call that updates the UI. Now this auth state observer right now, it doesn't do anything, or actually it does. You can see that here it gets the profile picture, gets the username, and then it updates a couple of things on the UI. So I'm going to save this now, and then let me quickly have a look at what is the next step. Yeah, we do have some changes that we need to do, but essentially if I go to Firebase friendly chat, here you can see that I'm still not logged in, but let's see what the next steps are, and then we can check it all together. Now the next step is to update the get profile pic URL. So I'm going to copy this code, and then I'm going to go to my code, and here we should have this get profile pic URL. So I'm going to update this one. Here you can see that it essentially gets the current user who is signed in and then checks the photo URL. And once we get the photo URL, we essentially place that, or we return it from here. Similarly, I'm going to copy the username, which is essentially doing the same thing. It's getting the current user and the display name property, and then it returns it. Once we are done with this, we can save this and check this out. So if I go to my friendly chat and if I refresh here, you can see that it automatically shows me my picture and my username. And if I sign out here, you can see that it goes away. So if I refresh now, I'm still in the sign out state. And as soon as I click the sign in with Google and I pick a user from here, you will see that automatically it essentially shows me the user image and also the name. So that is really good. We have implemented the authentication. Again, the important part here, if I summarize it for you, is to sign in, all we need to do is just use new Firebase auth Google auth provider, and we just need to call this sign in with pop-up function. That's pretty much it. That shows the pop-up, logs the user in, and for signing out, this is the function that we use. And whenever the state changes, then we do some magic, then we get the profile picture, get the username, and then we update the UI, the header, and whatnot. Now that we have this, let's move to the next step, which is writing the message to Cloud Firestore. And this is an interesting one. What would happen is that whenever we create a message, we are going to go into the Firestore database, and inside the Firestore database, we are going to have a messages collection. Now, a collection is a list of items. So each message is an item, and the messages is a collection of items. So here you can see that this is a database potentially. So we would have a messages collection, and each message is going to have a name of the person who sent this message, the profile picture of the person, the message itself, and the timestamp on when this was created. Now this is important because we need to sort the items according to the timestamp. So how do we actually push items to Firestore? First of all, we are going to find this method called save message, and we are going to update this with this code. So I'm going to copy this. I'm going to go to the code base, and here we are going to search save message, and here we have this, right? So in this particular case, we do have to just paste this code. One thing that I quickly noticed is that we have a different API in CodeLab versus what we are using here. So we are going to quickly update all of those. So starting with the sign in here. So in this final version of the code, we can actually see there's a different sort of code. So await sign in with pop-up, but then we do get auth and provider. So I'm going to change that with Firebase auth. So we are changing this to being this, and we are going to change the sign out as well. So here you can see that here we say firebase.auth sign out. Instead of that, we are going to say sign out and then get auth. Similarly, we are going to use the on state change. So instead of this one, we are going to use this. This is just going to make sure that we are connecting with the right instance of Firebase. So the problem right now is that we are kind of ending up in two different instances of Firebase here, which isn't ideal. So I'm going to use the profile picture here, which seems good here. Then we have the username. So I'm going to use this. Notice that instead of firebase.auth, every time we use this get auth, which essentially gets us the same thing. So Firebase auth current user, get auth current user, and the rest of the stuff is exactly the same. Similarly, I'm going to use the get user signed in here. So we are going to use this one, and then we got the save message. Now here also you see that it's a bit of different code. So what I'm going to do is that I'm just going to copy paste the code from the index WebRC instead of the CodeLab. So here in the save message, you see we got firebase.firestore.collection messages, but essentially with the new sort of standards of Firebase, we have this function that calls add doc. Inside here, we need to provide the collection itself, and then we need to provide the document to add. So it takes essentially two parameters. One, the collection to use, and the second, the document to add. So that's just the change in the API that we have right now. So I'm just going to copy this code, go to save message, and here just update it with this one. Now this looks much cleaner and much easier to use. So I'm just going to save this now. Now that we have done this, we can test if our messages are being added to Firebase. So I'm just going to go to my app here, and now if I say test1, hit send, you will see that nothing happened here. But if I try to go to my Firebase and if I try to refresh, let's see what happens. No, nothing. So I'm going to quickly go to inspect and see if there's anything missing. Here you can see that it says no Firebase app default has been created. Call Firebase initialize app. And the reason is that we are not initializing it yet. So if I go to my code again and go to index.js, and if I go to all the way to the bottom, here you will see that we are actually calling a function called initialize Firebase app or initialize app with the Firebase config. This is the line that we are missing. So I'm going to go and quickly go to the down here, and you see that it's not being called. So I'm going to just add it here. And now we should be able to work with this. So we don't even need this line, get Firebase conf. So we can just use this. So I'm going to save this now, and then we're going to try this again. So I'm going to refresh this. Now I'm going to say test 1 2 3, hit send, and you see that this message got empty, this button got disabled, and we didn't see any error. So if I go to my Cloud Firestore now and refresh, we should be able to see the messages collection. Yay! We got a new message, we got the name of the person who sent the message, the profile picture, the text, and the timestamp. So we are good to go with this one. Now we're just sending the message, but the fun fact is we are not seeing any messages so far. So how do we get those messages? For that, we are going to look at the next step. So here we have reading the messages, and the reading messages is a different function. So it's called load messages. So I'm going to quickly go to my code, and from the final one, I'm going to find load messages. And here you see that we have this code. So I'm going to copy this code, go to the web start, which is where we are coding, and then I'm going to search load messages and paste the code here. So again, I'm not pasting any code from CodeLab, but rather from the final version. Now if I paste this, notice what's happening here. It says recent messages query. So we are constructing a query to get data from Firebase. So this is just construction of the query, not execution. So we are saying, hey, we are creating a query against this collection, which is messages. Then we are saying that we need to order these by timestamp descending. And then finally, we are saying that, hey, the limit of this query for getting the items is 12. So we are only going to get 12 items. Now that we have constructed this query, we then use the onSnapshot method to listen to that query, which means that this query is now going to be constantly listened. That is, if anything changes within this collection, we are going to quickly trigger this function and then do the magic. For example, if a message is added to the messages collection, we are going to execute this. If a message is deleted, we are going to trigger this. If a message is updated, we are going to trigger this. And you can see here that we can get the change type. If that is removed, we delete the message. Otherwise, we essentially just update or add the message as it suits us. So I'm going to save this now and we are going to try it out. So let's save this. I'm going to go to my friendly chat again and refresh, and let's see what happens. Here, you see that we got the message. Yay! Now the fun part here is that if I go ahead and update this message even in the database, for example, if I say this is not test123, it's test222, and if I hit the update button, you will see that here, it automatically updated without even me refreshing the page. And that is amazing. So if I go ahead and delete this from here, delete the document, start delete, and here you see that it's gone. So this is real time, which means that our application is listening to those messages as they come. And even if I now add a new item here, you will see that instantly it automatically adds it. We don't have to write anything for that particularly. Now that we have added this particular situation here or this messages here, let's move to the next step, which is sending the messages. Now that we have added the load messages method, we can go ahead and talk about sending the images, and this is going to be really interesting. So we got to find this method called save image message. So I'm going to go to my code, go to web.index.js, and here I'm going to find save image message. So this is where we need to put the code. I'm going to go here and find this as well. So here we have this code. Now I'm going to copy this and I'm going to explain to you what's happening in this code. And this is an interesting one, to be honest. So here, what happens? What we do here is that whenever we have to add a message that is an image message, when we select a file, we essentially add a new document for that message. So what we do is we first add a message, then we upload the file to the cloud storage, and then we update the same message, essentially the image URL. By default, when we add the message, we set the image URL to a loading image URL, which is just a loader, a temporary loader. But when the file is uploaded to cloud storage and we get the resultant URL, we essentially use that URL and update our message. So that's what's happening. One, we essentially create a message with the loading icon. Second, we upload the image to cloud storage. Third, we generate a public URL for this file that we just got. And then fourth, we update the chat message placeholder with the image's URL. So let's save this and let's try this out and see how this works actually. So I'm going to go to my app now. I'm going to refresh now. I'm going to select this image and upload it. And here, if I do this, you can see that we got the image working, or we got the image uploaded. Now, you need to make sure that if you go to your storage, the Firebase storage, you need to make sure that your rules are set just like this. So you have a request time and everything looks like this. So I'm quickly going to refresh this just to make sure that these are the rules that we are talking about. So make sure that you have your request time, which is less than the timestamp date. So it should be like 30 days ahead from today. And notice that while the image is being uploaded, you see the loading icon and then it is updated. For example, if I upload this screenshot, you see that this is the loading icon. And now finally, when the image is uploaded, then we update the message with the correct URL. And if I go to the Firestore, here we see the new messages with the image URL and they point to the final updated image that we just uploaded. And if I go to my Firebase storage as well, I should be able to see all these files. So here you see one file, two files, and here inside we have the file that we talked about, the screenshot PNG. So you can look at those right here. So we got our image messages working as well. Yay! Now that we have these, we can essentially move forward with the next step. Now we are going to talk about showing the notifications, and this essentially takes some work. Now for this, what you want to do is you need to enable cloud messaging. So we are going to go to Firebase Cloud Messaging, essentially from here. So you need to go down and then click cloud messaging. And then this is where we are going to start from. Now this is essentially a playground from where you can send the notifications. But essentially if you go to friendly chat and then you see settings, or actually you can go to the top, project settings, and here you have cloud messaging. Now here you can see that we got some server keys initiated. So we are going to use them in just a bit. So in the CodeLab, you can see that it says in the web app manifest, we need to specify the GCM sender ID. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to essentially copy this and update this in the manifest.json. So I'm going to go to my code. In the web start project, we are going to go into public, and then in here we have the manifest.json. So I'm going to just paste it here, and you can see that this is the ID. Now you don't need to change this ID. That is what the CodeLab says. So do not change it. Now that we have done this, let's see. So from the web start, we need a Firebase messaging sw.js file, and inside there we just need to paste these scripts. So I'm going to copy this. I'm going to go to the file which is Firebase messaging this, and then here let's see, it's JS map. No, we need this JS file. And here we are going to just paste this. Now you can see that this looks good, and I'm going to actually check the source file. Probably we don't need to update. Yes, we don't need to update the public file. We need to update the file inside source. So web start, source, and then we have Firebase messaging sw.js. Here is where we are going to paste this code. So now let's save this. And I'm going to double check it from the web final project. So in here we have this file, which is essentially something different. So I'm going to go and see and essentially copy this code and then go inside web start, source, Firebase messaging, and instead of these that I copied from CodeLab, I'm just going to use this. So notice what's happening. We are initializing the app with the config. We are using the get messaging, and then we are passing this Firebase application that we just initialized, and that's essentially all of it. So I'm just going to save this now, and let's see what we have apart from this one. Getting the FCM tokens and then utilizing those. So I'm going to find this save messaging device token inside our final index.js, which is index web source. So inside the final web, we have index.js. I'm going to find the save message device token. And here is the code that we want. So essentially this is the function. So I'm going to copy all of this code. We're going to go our web start index.js, find the same function, and here paste it. Now let's see what this function is doing. First of all, it gets the token from Firebase, which is the FCM token. Now this token is essentially the identifier. For example, I'm using the app, you're using the app. This token is going to identify where to send the message, to you or to me. And this ID token or this FCM token is really important in that case. So here, if we get the current token, it shows this log. Then we get a token ref from Firebase from FCM tokens, because as soon as we try to log in from a device and the user is logged in, we essentially will create a new document with this FCM token into the Firestore database. And that's what we are doing here. So we get the token, then we get the token ref, and then we essentially set it. So we are going to see it just in a bit. Then we add a listener and we say, hey, whenever we get a message from Firebase, we need to console log this particular message. All right, that's what we are doing right now. And if we don't have permissions already for notifications, we are going to request notification. And you might have seen this in a lot of applications that when you go to a particular application, it says, hey, do you want to allow notifications or not? So this code essentially requests the notification. So I'm going to save this now and we are going to try it now. So let's save this. I'm going to go to friendly chat, and after refreshing, we don't see FCM notification. But if I go to console, we see got FCM device token because I already provided the notification permissions, but you could try it just like this. So if I go and disable notification, for example, or reset permissions, let's see what happens. So I'm going to refresh now. All right. And now that we have this, we still don't have the notifications at all. So I'm going to refresh now. And now here I can enable notification. Site settings. Here we got notifications asked by default. So I'm going to close this. And here you can see that the notification permission was not granted, but blocked instead. Now, since I have already set this once, I think that's why it's not allowing me. But when you get it first time, you're going to be able to allow it automatically. So I'm going to go to notifications, reset permission, can ask to send notification permission. Okay. So if I refresh now, let's see what happens. Here you can see that I got a pop-up called notification block. So I'm going to allow for this site. And as soon as I do so, I get the FCM token. There we go. So now that we have got this token, I'm just going to save this somewhere. So I'm going to open Notepad and save this right here. Okay. Now let's see what the CodeLab says. Now that we have got this, we also need to use the request notification permissions. So that's why it wasn't showing. So let's update the code for this as well. I'm going to go to index web, try to find the code for this one. And here I'm going to paste this. So now we should be able to see the notifications now. So I'm going to save this. Now I'm going to go to my app. Make sure that we reset the permissions. I'm going to refresh now and notifications block as it says. So I'm going to allow for this side and we should be good. Now that we have this, let's move forward. So here it's talking about us sending the notification to our device. Now you could send it via curl or terminal, but what I would do is that I would essentially use a postman call for doing the same thing. So let me show you how to do that. So I'm going to use Insomnia for this one, but you can use postman as well. And we also need essentially this device token and the server key. So we need two things for this, the server key and the device token. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to go to my friendly chat project settings, and this is the server key. So I'm going to copy the server key as well. I'm going to go to my doc and update this as well. And now let's see. So I'm going to go to Insomnia. Let me bring that up really quick. So this is the Insomnia app that I'm using, but as I said, you can use Postman. So if I go to Firebase chat, which is this one, I can say, hey, today is awesome. This is the sort of payload that we want to send. So look at this. It has a notifications object. Inside that we have title, body, icon, then click action, and then we have this notification that you can see here. And this is essentially the FCM ID. So I'm going to copy my FCM ID that I received inside here, which is the FCM device token. So I copy this, I paste it inside this 2. Then I go here and I copy this whole server key. And then I need to go to Insomnia and I need to go to header. And inside header, we need to have authorization key equals. And then I can go ahead and just paste this here. All right. You saw that it is a bit different from my last try that I was trying. Now, if I try to make this call, let's see what happens. So if I hit send, you can see that not registered as it says. So we got the key here, but we got the FCM ID wrong. So let's see quickly. So we got 2 here and I need to go to friendly chat and I need to copy this whole token just to make sure that I'm using the right one. Maybe this is because we are having some sort of spacing. Not really sure. Let's see. So if I go to here and if I paste this right here, yeah, it looks a bit different. So I'm going to use this one. I'm going to go to Insomnia. I'm going to paste it here now. And now if I hit send, yay, you can see that result says message ID. This means that we should have received a notification from this server or from Firebase now. All right. Now you can see that here we also got a new foreground notification for Firebase messaging. That's what we saw here. Now I'm going to go and open another tab. And now we're going to do the same thing. So I'm going to click send. And now you heard the notification sound. So I'm going to show you how this looks because this is on my second monitor. So I'm going to just quickly copy this and now show you what I received. So here is what I received. You can see that it says today is awesome, which we sent right here. So today is awesome. And then we also got this is a new message in friendly chat. There's a new message in friendly chat. And also you see the other stuff as well, localhost 5000. So if I clicked that notification, I would have brought back to the app. So let's try this once again. If I hit send, we got the notification. If I click on it, you can see that it brings us back to localhost 5000, although it brings us back to the first instance of it. So let me close this one and try this once again. I'm going to click send. And now if I click here, you can see that it brought us back automatically to friendly chat. Yay! Now you can send notifications to your users. Awesome. So now that we have this, let's talk about Cloud Firestore security rules. And this is actually important because right now, the security rules that we have, they allow anyone to access our Firestore and also our storage. And we need to restrict that. We need to make sure that only the logged in people can access this. Okay. So what we need to do is that we need to update our database security rules for Firestore. So here you can see that if I go ahead to firestore.rules, I can use all of this. So instead of copying from here, again, I'm going to copy from the web or the final project. So here you can see that we have firestore.rules. So I'm going to copy all of this. Then I'm going to go to web start, and inside here I'm going to go to Firebase rules or Firestore rules. So I need to create that file, it looks like. So I can simply say firestore.rules. And now I can paste this. So here there are a lot of things going on at the moment. We can also see if there's a marketplace extension for rules. It looks like there is. So I'm going to install it right away. And now this should look much better. Yay! So now you can see that there are a lot of things going on. First of all, if the request.auth is not equals to null, then we are supposed to access this, which means that if the user is not logged in, we are not going to be allowing the access to our database. This is really important. Also, you can see that anyone can read this, but to create or update, we need someone to be authenticated, which means that now I can go ahead and just use this application without even having to log in. Okay. Secondly, you can also see that here we have some data text size, which means that we are limiting the text messages to be at least or to be at most 300. Similarly, we are talking about some other things like the image URL should be string. The image URL should match HTTPS, which means that we are not trying to use localhost or anything like that. So there are a lot of things that are happening right here. So I'm going to just save this. Now, if I go below here, you can see that we have some things happening here. So to update the security rules in Firebase console, what we need to do is that we need to go to web start, Firestore rules, and then we already updated that. Then we need to update the firebase.json to contain this. So I'm going to copy this one and then I'm going to go to web start, and here we got Firebase JSON, and here I'm just going to update this here. I'm going to remove this. So Firestore rules and Firestore rules here. Then we need to do Firebase deploy only Firestore, and before deploying we can quickly check that if I go to my Firestore, which is here, and if I go to rules, this is how the rules look right now, which means that we can see this is how they look. So if I go and open a terminal and then I run this command, so I'm going to go to open a new terminal, do cd web start, and then I can run Firebase deploy only Firestore, which means that it is going to update the roles. Here you can see that Cloud Firestore are updating the roles right now. And then if I go and refresh, let's see what we see here. Yay! You can see that we got our code from my machine to here, and now we have updated the rules for the Cloud Firestore. Similarly, we are going to update for the cloud storage. So here, let's see what it looks like. So the changes that we are doing here will essentially allow each user to write only to their folders, which means that they cannot access any other folders. Right now, if I go to storage, you can see that this is the user and these are the folders, right? So this user will only be able to update their own particular folder and not anyone else's. So if I go to authentication, let's actually see the user itself. So if I go here, you can see that this is the ID J06C, and here if I go here, you can also see the same ID. So in the cloud storage, we get a folder according to each user. That is important to understand. Now from the CodeLab, it says allow anyone to read from the cloud storage, so anyone can see the images. Make sure the files uploaded are images and restrict the size to a maximum of 5 MB. Now what we need to do is that we need to create a new file called storage.rules and essentially copy paste this one. So I'm going to go into web start and I'm going to say here storage.rules. Okay, and then I'm going to copy it from the web folder. So here we got storage.rules. I'm going to copy this and then I'm going to paste it into the new web start file called storage.rules. And now have a look at that. It's saying that, hey, the resource.size should be less than the size that we just mentioned. So it's number of MBs. So max size MBs that we discussed was 5 MBs. And then we also need to make sure that this is an image that we are uploading. So it's not going to allow us to upload anything apart from the image. And here you can see that we are using the value 5 for 5 MBs. All right. So now that we have done this, we need to upload this similar to the Cloud Firestore. So here you can see that we need to add this new thing in the firebase.json. So I'm going to go into firebase.json, and here I'm just going to paste this, which is essentially saying that the storage uses this file. And then we need to run firebase deploy only storage. So I'm going to go and just paste this command. But before running this, let's have a quick look at the storage and the rules. Right now, as we had previously, we have very simple rules, but I'm going to deploy this right now, and let's see if they update correctly. Awesome. So if I go to my console here and refresh, we should be able to see the new rules. Yay! You can see that we got them correctly. Let's move forward. So now we are going to talk about collecting performance data, and the performance data essentially collides with a couple of things like the first paint of the application, the first contentful paint, the first input delay, the time to interactive, and whatnot. So in order to just enable the performance, all we need to do is just add one line, and that is just adding the performance analysis. So I'm going to go to my code, and I'm going to go to the final index.js, and here at the very bottom you can see that we got this get performance method that we need to use. So I'm going to go now into web start source index.js, and at the very bottom I'm just going to add this file called get performance and just use this. Now this function is already imported up top in the web start, so we don't need to worry about that. Okay, so it's imported from Firebase performance. I'm just going to save this, and over time this performance analysis or this performance trace would start building. So this is important to understand as well. Now that we have done this, there's one thing that I need to do, and that is uncomment this line into index.html. So I'm going to go to my code, go into public index.html, and then here we have a commented line, which is this one, first input delay polyfill library, and I just need to uncomment this one, and that should be it. So I'm just going to save this, and we are good to go. Now finally we need to deploy this application to the cloud so everyone can use this. So all we need to do now is that we need to go to firebase.json, and here add this line called hosting public. Well, actually this is already done. So if I go to my firebase.json, you can see that hosting public is already added, so we don't need to do that. Then we just need to run firebase deploy except functions, and then we are good. So I'm just going to go here and then run this command. So I'm going to run firebase deploy except functions, which means everything apart from functions. So we are running Firestore, storage, hosting. So all of these things are going to be deployed. And once we do so, we should get a URL, which is a production URL, and we should be able to access all of the things that we just discussed about. So here you can see that we got the hosting URL, which is friendlychat7113a. So if I open this, let's see what happens. It opened the application. We see the messages, which means that we are not logged in. Notice that. And we are still able to get those information. Now, if I changed this rule inside my database, the Firestore database, then things might look a bit different. For example, if I go here and see the rules here, you will see that if I change this to be, for example, if the read also had this information where we would say, hey, do not allow it if the user is not logged in, then the things might change. So it will not allow reading if the user is not logged in. So if I refresh now, you will see that we don't get any data. But if I sign in, it would essentially allow me to do so. So I'm going to go back and change what we had. So I'm going to allow to read this. I'm going to publish these rules just to make sure that we can read them again. So let's quickly refresh now. And there you go. We are starting to get the messages. Now let's check the sign in with Google, which seems to be broken right now. So we need to see what's going on right there. So I'm going to go to friendly chat, and here we are going to try to sign in with Google. So I'm going to first sign out, and then I'm going to sign in with Google again. So here it says Firebase error, auth argument error. So let's quickly see what's happening there. So I'm going to go to my index web source, and here we have sign in with pop-up. So here we got this code that we need to get. And if I go to my code, which is sign in here, yeah, we have a different one here. So that's why it's failing. So I'm going to quickly run this, save this, try it out on local, and then deploy as well so everyone can access it. So I'm going to refresh this, try sign in with Google. Yes, the pop-up shows up, and now we can quickly deploy this. So I'm going to run the deploy command again. So we are building this application and also deploying this to the cloud server or the cloud deployment, and then we should be able to test it out as well. Awesome. As you can see, we released a new version. If I open this app now, we should be able to sign in the final production build using the pop-up. And here you see I am trying to sign in now. And there you go. You can see my logo here. And now I should be able to send those messages as well. I can say test and the message is here. I can also try to upload an image and that should also pass through. So if I just share this, you can also see the image here. And now I'm going to even test it out into a different browser. So I'm using another account here. And now here I can sign in with Google. And then I'm going to use this particular account to send some messages. Here you can see that it also asked me to show notifications and I will say allow. And now notifications are enabled for me. If I go to inspect and if I go to console here, I should be able to essentially see the FCM token. There you go. We see the FCM token here. And now if I send a new message, I can say something like, hey, this is a new message. And if I send this message goes through. I see my image as well. And if I go to the other browser, automatically we get the new message here as well. Awesome. And that is essentially the final step of this one. So you can now share this app with your friends and have your own private messaging chat app that you can use for fun or just show this as a portfolio to everyone. And that's pretty much it. I hope you liked the video. If you did, try to modify this and make it your own. Try to change the UI, use Tailwind CSS, use some other framework like React or Angular or whatnot. But whatever you do not forget to like the video, share this video, and also subscribe if you have not already. And let me know in the comments what I should be building next or if there's a particular code lab that you want me to do. So I hope this was useful to you. And as always, till the next time, happy coding and take care of yourself.